Look, I'm not gonna lie, sculpting the hands are tough, and sculpting the hands at this scale is even harder. So I'm using some very small tools to kind of get in the way there. But you have to understand a little bit about anatomy. You also have to keep in mind that I'm not trying to do so much detail in the hand just because it's not the thing I want. I don't want to draw attention from the figure, but I want the hands to look like they're human. And at this point, there's quite a few problems with them. I want to separate that pinky a little bit from the rest of the fingers, so I'm going to push it out in a little bit. You know, I've certainly sculpted a lot of hands before, but generally it's my hand. I'm holding up my left hand and I'm looking at it. But I wish I had taken better photos in reference of the model. This is something that I keep struggling with because I don't want to ask the model for me to take photos because it seems kind of cheesy. But I do enjoy working from life, but as an artist, it's not always a good idea because you don't have that much money to hire a model for that prolonged amount of time. So oftentimes you have to use reference and use your imagination or your own hand. I tend to use my own hand for reference, but of course this is a woman's hand and I am not that big of a guy, so my hands are kind of bony. I want these to be a lot softer. So that's the reason I don't want to put too much detail, because if I was to sculpt the knuckles or any of the bones in the hand, it would look like that the hands would not belong to that body. I think one of the things that I'm learning is that you should spend a few hours just in itself in small details of the figure once you've established the main figure. When you're working on the figure, for example, work on the entire figure. Don't neglect the feet, don't neglect the hands, don't neglect the head. Just work on the entire figure. And once you have that established and you know that the proportions are more or less correct, you can start to spend a whole lot more time in the fingers, in the hands, in the breasts, in the knees, all the stuff that a lot of people get sucked into doing in the beginning. So it's kind of important to keep away from details in the beginning. As you can see here now, since I established the structure of the hand, I put some water on there and then I just kind of brushed it over a little bit with my cloth because that's going to give it a little bit more softness. And it's the softness that I'm looking for in this particular sculpture. The scraping tool works pretty well for removing clay, but you don't want to leave those marks on there unless you're that type of sculptor. But I use that to kind of get rid of the geometry, and I prefer the texture of the cloth because that gives it almost imperfect sort of texture to it, but it also looks a little bit more lifelike. And once at the end of the sculpture and I establish a patina, these marks are not going to be that evident. Alright guys, that was sculpting the hand. I'll see you in the next video. Stay tuned.